Welcome to my channel. My name is Adina. I'm an intuitive astrologer. In this video, I will be going over the energies for the Mercury retrograde we are having in Aries, April 1st to the 25th, 2024. I will be going over some charts for the Mercury retrograde. I will also be getting into Canada's chart, and then I will also be getting into Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre because this Mercury retrograde is showing up really interesting for them. And of course, we know what affects them, affects us, Canadians. And then I will also be getting into Alto rising signs. So I will have timestamps below so that you can skip ahead to the portion of the video that you wish to watch. But I do recommend watching the first section of the video where I go over the charts for the actual Mercury retrograde because it will bring context to the energies, especially once we get into Alto rising signs. Now, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because it does show that 86% of you that watch my videos are not subscribed. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a video because I do post a lot of Canadian content. Now let's get right into this presentation that I have created. So I thought we would go over what is a Mercury retrograde. We know that Mercury rules our minds, communication style, also vehicles and community, neighbors, siblings, cousins. These are all themes and topics that are associated with Mercury. So during a Mercury retrograde, we can have difficulties and challenges in these areas. There can be miscommunication. There can be a shift in mindset in some way. And of course, once we get into all 12 rising signs, you'll see the areas of life this Mercury retrograde is working with you. I have had vehicle issues during a Mercury retrograde. Mercury rules vehicles, so this is absolutely a thing. Mercury retrograde can also mess up technology, Wi-Fi, and this is a period of time where you want to watch your emails and text messages. You can send somebody the wrong email or text message during a Mercury retrograde. Somebody can also take your message or email the wrong way. There's a lot of miscommunication during Mercury retrograde of people not understanding, the intent or the message that the other party is trying to deliver. So we want to make sure that we're clear on communication during this time. And if it's an important email or text message, if you can maybe call the person or do it face to face, because it can be taken out, out of context, or it can be taken the wrong way. During a Mercury retrograde, though, it is really good to redo things. So if you have a course or you're wanting to redo a paper or document of some kind, this is a time where you have the supportive energy to do so. If you want to make any adjustments to your course or book or paperwork or whatever the case is, the Mercury retrograde is a great time to do so. Now, this is a time where we want to reflect and we want to reevaluate our life direction or direction associated with the themes and topics Mercury retrograde is working with us. So it's a really good time. And because Mercury is retrograding in Aries, which we'll get into, I think there's going to be a lot of self-reflection going on with this Mercury retrograde. Now, let's talk about the Aries energies for a minute. Aries is a cardinal fire sign. It's the first sign of the zodiac, very fiery. Aries is ruled by Mars. We currently have Mars in Pisces, which is really going to shift that energy up a little bit. But Aries represents the self. It can represent identity. It can represent individuality. And so there can be a lot of self-reflection and shift in who you are or who you thought you were, or a complete shift in mindset and wanting to reinvent yourself in some way, especially too because we have Chiron in Aries and we have the North Node in Aries, and we're going to have this Mercury retrograde during the solar eclipse in Aries. So there's a lot showing up around the self. So this is a really good time to have that self-awareness so that you can really pinpoint what is coming up for you. And when I say that, I mean ideas, intuitive downloads, emotions. Because it's Mercury retrograde, though, we want to pay attention to our thoughts. There can definitely be like a shift in mindset or just like a sporadic thought that you can, and if you actually, this just came to me, if you have Mercury retrograde natally, you can receive a lot of intuitive downloads. I have Mercury retrograde natally, and I also have a lot of clients that do, and this is something that I've seen is pretty consistent with the Mercury retrograde natives, is that you actually can receive a lot of intuitive downloads or ideas or epiphanies during a Mercury retrograde. So pay attention to that. Now, the first couple of charts we're going to look into is Mercury forming a conjunction to the North Node. So Mercury formed a conjunction to the North Node on March 18th, and this is when Mercury entered pre-shadow. So I want you to think back to March 18th, what was showing up for you around who you are, who you want to be, what type of thoughts were you having, what information were you receiving, what type of messages were you receiving, what kind of conversations were you having? Was there something that shifted on this day? Because when Mercury forms a conjunction to the North Node again on April 25th, Mercury is going to station direct. So this is where there can be some type of epiphany. When Mercury stations direct on the North Node, whatever has shown up since March 18th to April 1st, that those are the themes and topics we'll be kind of moving through, whatever shows up during Mercury pre-shadow. And then during the Mercury retrograde is when we're doing the reflection, the reevaluation. What are we wanting to change here? What is the shift in mindset and how are we going to do that? How are we going about it? What's the new direction? And then when Mercury stations direct, that's when we have a better understanding and clarity to those ideas and thoughts and themes and topics that were showing up. So we definitely want to be paying attention on April 25th when Mercury stations direct, because Mercury will be right on top of that North Node, and there can definitely be some really important conversation, clarity, or understanding about next steps. And remember, this is Aries, so this is about you. This is about the self, your identity, your individuality, who you are, who you want to be. This is the energy we're in, and this is kind of what we're navigating with this Mercury retrograde. Now, at the same time of Mercury stationing direct, we're moving off of that conjunction with Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus. So it's a really interesting energy, especially too because Mars is ruling that Mercury retrograde, and Mars will be sextile that Jupiter Uranus. So there really can be some sudden support or sudden awakening or enlightenment or clarity once we reach the mid to end of April and have this conjunction. So we really want to have that mindfulness and that self-awareness for the entire month of April, because there's so many energies going on that's going to be life-changing. Now, the next chart I want to go over is the Venus conjunction. Mercury is going to form a conjunction to Venus on April 19th. And this is going to be Mercury retrograde will conjunct Venus at 17 degrees of Aries. Now, this is only 2 degrees away from the North Node, and we want to remember that Venus is the ruler of that South Node. So whatever you've been navigating with the eclipse energy, and also Venus is the ruler of this conjunction down here, which is around the exact same time, because this conjunction comes exact, I believe it's April 20th. The conjunction comes exact. And Venus is the ruler of that. So we want to pay attention on the 19th when we have this Mercury retrograde conjunction to Venus, because there can really be some sudden epiphany, insight, clarity, understanding, or something really beautiful coming in to help with this South Node energy. And this can have to do with relationships, money, finances. I do feel like we're really in a lot of energy around relationships. So there can really be something supportive coming in at this time, helping you to understand what either needs to be released or let go in this area, or how to go about navigating this energy. And also at the same time, there's a Saturn in conjunction to the South Node. So that is also interesting. Wow, gotta love that Saturn energy. And Saturn being in Pisces, and I'm kind of going off topic here for a minute, but I'm feeling pulled to touch on this. But Saturn being in Pisces, depending on where you have Pisces in your birth chart, Saturn's wanting you to become accountable and responsible for your part in whatever you're putting into this area of life. Saturn wants you to take accountability. And Saturn being in Pisces can be, your energy, spirituality, emotions, you becoming more emotionally mature or emotionally responsible. I hope you're kind of getting the gist of the message I'm trying to send, but I just felt like I needed to kind of throw that in there. But on April 19th, when we have this Venus conjunction to Mercury retrograde, this is where there can really be some sudden action initiated. It's almost like it could feel a little bit of a like renewal in some sense. But because Venus is the dispositor of this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, there's definitely an important conversation being had or important information coming out. Or a better understanding of your self-love, self-worth, self-confidence. Um, we want to remember Chiron is here. So we are in energies of a lot of trauma surfacing, a lot of insecurities coming to the surface, a lot of, old hurt that we're having to move through. And so with this conjunction, there really can be some really big understanding or clarity on how to navigate this and next steps. Now I want to talk about the Chiron conjunctions with Mercury, because Mercury is going to form a conjunction to Chiron 3 times. Mercury formed a conjunction to Chiron on March 20th during the pre-shadow. Then it's going to form a conjunction to Chiron during the retrograde period on April 15th, and then again in the post-shadow period on May 6th. Now, I just brought up in the previous slide about insecurities and traumas, and this is where that energy can become more potent and activated on those dates. So think back to March 20th. What was showing up for you? Was there an important conversation that you were having, or was there an important intuitive download or thought? That's kind of what you want to reflect on. During the Mercury retrograde period is when there can be a lot of internal reflection, really going within and figuring out, how do I want to work with this? How do I want to navigate this? Is there something I need to just let go of? Are there aspects of myself that I'm just done with and I'm ready to just heal and let it go? Now, when Mercury forms the conjunction during the post shadow period is when you will gain clarity on that. That is when that energy will kind of come to a head. You'll have a better understanding, better clarity, and you will know exactly the direction you want to move in, or also you'll know exactly how to go about letting it go, how to go about finally releasing these aspects of yourself, how to get over this trauma, how to get through and let go these, insecurities, lack of self-worth, things like that. Whatever this Chiron and Aries, because we want to remember that Aries represents the self. And so whatever has been activated the last few weeks at this point, that's when you'll gain clarity when we have that conjunction. We also want to remember too that the solar eclipse in Aries is going to be right on top of Chiron on April 8th, which can also be a really big trigger point. And when Mercury forms in conjunction to Chiron during the post-shadow period, this is when there can be big developments around self-development, self-discovery, self-identity, shame, insecurities, and your healing journey. Now let's get into Canada's chart, because Canada has this Mercury retrograde happening in the 10th house of government, corporations, authority, leadership. So I think there's definitely going to be some information coming out about the government that can seem unclear. We know that on April 1st, we have a new carbon tax coming out. So that could cause an uproar, especially too, because we have all of this energy in the 11th house on top of Pluto. And we're going to have that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the 11th house. And the 11th house rules groups of people, associations, humanity, groups of people coming together. So there definitely can be something really big showing up with groups of people forming, protests, things like that. We also have this Mars-Saturn conjunction right on top of Canada's south node. So there can be a lot coming back from the past for Canada, maybe things that were hidden, which can be a part of that Mercury retrograde energy in the 10th house, maybe things the government hid or the leaders hid. There can definitely be, big developments around that and a lot of information coming out. Also, too, because this energy is in the 9th house, there can be a lot showing up around Canada's association with other countries or foreign cultures, Canada's relationship to other countries, maybe things that were hidden behind the scenes when it has to do with Canada and other countries. I mean, it can definitely show up in that way. We also want to keep in mind and take a look at this Pluto here, which is an Aquarius, opposing Canada's natal Mercury, which can definitely be exposing a lot that was hidden beneath the surface. And it's interesting that Mercury's in the second house of money, finances, and material possessions. And last I seen, actually in my previous video, one of my previous videos, I linked videos below in the description. And one of those videos was talking about Canada and Justin Trudeau's association with the banks and how money was hidden and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's a clear representation of that energy. And we may hear more about that, or we may hear other scenarios that are just like that, where there's been money hidden, money laundering, things like that. And because of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the 11th house, I think we may see more protests about whatever is exposed or whatever the government is trying to implement during April. Because on April 8th, we also have, which I'll talk about in my solar eclipse forecast, but on April 8th, we have the solar eclipse in Aries, which is in Canada's 10th house, which can be a really big incident or something really big going on with the government. And when Mercury has the Mercury cazimi, which is when Mercury forms a conjunction to the sun, it's going to be in the 10th. There can really be some big news coming out. So we want to, and actually, hold on, I'm gonna give you that date of the Mercury cazimi, which is on the 11th. On April 11th, we will have the Mercury cazimi. So we want to pay attention to that date because there can be some really big information coming out, or a really big message from the government coming out that does affect the people, that can then be this uproar or protest developing, or people kind of coming together to fight for on a certain topic. Also too, the 11th house can also rule like online. So there can be a lot more censorship, or there could be something going on online too that we want to watch for. Okay, so now we're going to get into Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. So Justin Trudeau's chart is right here on the left. Pierre Poilievre is on the right. Now the inner circle is the birth chart, and the transits are on the outer wheel. So Justin Trudeau has this Mercury retrograde happening in his 8th house of secrets. So it's interesting. And again, we have to keep in mind, we do not have Pierre Poilievre's exact accurate time of birth. So we don't know the house that he's having this Mercury retrograde in. But what we can do is see how it's hitting his other planets. And it's happening opposite his Pluto, which the South Node is on top of his Pluto. And if you watched my Pierre Poilievre video, I talked a lot about how right now he's all about exposing what is hidden and exposing secrets. And the fact that Justin Trudeau has this Mercury retrograde in the 8th house, I feel like he's going to be the one to expose the secrets that have been going on. When I seen this, I just thought it showed up so literal, that I had to add them into this forecast and presentation, because I was like, oh my gosh, like it's literally showing, Pierre Poilievre is going through this thing right now where he feels, even with the Uranus Jupiter conjunction too is going to happen right on top of his Venus, which is really big, right? I mean, we don't know if this is in the 10th house of career, but it's still showing like he's about to make some really big moves. And also Venus rules his, Venus is currently the ruler of his Pluto, right? So revealing, or not currently, but Venus rules his Pluto because he has Pluto in Libra. So it rules that revealing secrets, bringing what is hidden beneath the surface to light. Now, Justin Trudeau has Pluto right on top of his Venus. So it can show that all that, like, his secrets are being revealed, like Venus conjunct his North Node. And I've touched on his energy before because he also has like a Venus trying to Pluto. Like, I think part of his desires are to control people. If you haven't checked out my Justin Trudeau video, make sure you do so. But the fact that Pluto's like right on top of his Venus, like really bringing those secrets to light, really bringing what was hidden and what his intentions are, and bringing that all to light. And so he's having the Mercury retrograde in the 8th house. Now it's also going to be going over his moon, so there can be a lot going on with his body, but there can also be a lot going on with his home, which we know he is going through marital issues. But there can be a lot going on, with his home, finances, because the eighth house also has to do with resources, money coming in from outside, your investments and things like that. So, not only is that eighth house can be exposing secrets, but it can also be bringing up a lot of money issues for him, which is interesting because that seems to be the message that is starting to come out is him and money. Also, too, that Neptune is moving a lot closer to his Mars. And when you have Neptune transiting over your Mars, you don't have a lot of energy. You actually feel quite depleted, and you don't have almost like that motivation and willpower and drive to start, you know, doing things. So I feel like he is kind of just letting things happen. Like he may not even really have the energy anymore to fight. But he is going to make things difficult while he can and is not going to go out smooth, but he's not going to put too much effort into whatever, like if that makes sense. He's also going through his Mars return as well. Aries, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in your first house. You also have the solar eclipse happening in your first house. So you have all of this energy in the first house and even in the 12th house. There's a lot going on right now with your self-identity, who you are, who you want to be. There's a lot of self-reflection, especially for you, Aries. You really want to have the self-awareness at this time. There can even be, figuring out what you want, figuring out what you don't want, figuring out next steps. There could be a lot of miscommunication during this time. You really want to be watching how you communicate because that energy is opposing your seventh house of relationships. There can be a lot of miscommunication, people taking what you're saying the wrong way, or just people thinking who you are is wrong. But there can be definitely a lot of misunderstandings with you and the message that you're trying to deliver. So this Mercury retrograde would be a really great time to do some self-reflection, self-evaluation, figure out your next steps, really go within and figure out, who are you? What are aspects of yourself that you're just done with? Especially when it has to do with 12th house stuff, things you hide from people, things that prevent you from really becoming the best version of yourself. That's a lot of that is going to be coming up at this time, and you're really going to have to reflect on that and release and let some things go. Taurus, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in your 12th house. So this can be a time where you're just having to come away from the world. This can also be an energy of really deep intuitive downloads. So I would definitely be paying attention to the insights you're getting, intuitive downloads, messages, thoughts, even conversations, because the 12th house can be quite spiritual. The 12th house also rules our subconscious. The 12th house can also rule our self-undoing behaviors and patterns. So there can be a lot of that showing up as well. Maybe you becoming aware of these aspects of yourself. And realizing that maybe you're just done with these parts of yourself, that maybe you're ready to release, let go, move forward. But all in all, you may just be feeling during this Mercury retrograde like you're wanting to just come away from the world, focus a little bit more on you, take some rest and relaxation time, because you're having that really big Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in your first house, which is really going to shake things up for you. Gemini, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in your 11th house of friends and friendships, social groups, humanitarian pursuits, also your hopes and your dreams. So during this Mercury retrograde, there can be a lot going on with friends that you might need to address. Maybe, realizing that those who you are connected to or associate with are just no longer in alignment. There could be a lot of misunderstandings with friends. There could also be a lot of you realizing maybe how much you've changed and you just don't want to be, associated with these types of groups or people anymore. So, that's something that, and also too, because we have the solar eclipse in this house in the 11th, there can be kind of something coming to a head that you're having to reflect on, especially when it has to do with friendships. Cancer, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in your 10th house of career and public reputation, leadership. So there's a lot possibly showing up at this Mercury retrograde that has to do with your job or your career choices or a new direction that you're wanting to take with your career. There might be some confusion around here, this area of life. Maybe wanting to take a new position within your career, but you're not sure if you're going to get chosen or if you're going to get selected or if it's going to work out. There can just be a lot of confusion around your career and maybe even public reputation. Like I would be careful putting things online at this time, or like kind of out in the world because they can be taken the wrong way. Because of that Mercury retrograde in the 10th, there can be a lot of miscommunication at work or miscommunication that when it has to do with like your public image. So I would just be cautious of how you're communicating with coworkers, how you're communicating at work, and how you're communicating online, because this is a period of time that your public image or public reputation can be changed in some way. This is also a period of time where maybe you're changing how you want your public image to be. Maybe you're changing how you want to be known out in the world. Leo, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in your 9th house of higher education, higher knowledge, long distance travel, philosophy, religion, belief systems. So there can be a lot going on with your beliefs at this time, maybe questioning your beliefs, questioning, religious beliefs, philosophical beliefs, maybe wanting to travel, but not sure where you want to go. We want to remember Mercury retrograde. There's not a lot of clarity. There can be a lot of misunderstandings. This can also have to do with school, higher education. So, you want to be cautious of these themes and topics. Make sure that you're not really making any sudden moves during the Mercury retrograde period. This is a time to just reflect, right? This is actually a time too to sit and journal. Think about, and I'm talking more so on if you're questioning your beliefs. This can be a time where you're just realizing that your religious beliefs or philosophical beliefs or beliefs in general are just not in alignment with who you are now. And there can be a lot of that reflection and reevaluation going on with this Mercury retrograde in the 9th house. Virgo, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in your 8th house of your partner's finances, money coming in from outside resources, taxes, inheritance, also psychological healing and transformation. There's a lot going on for you right now, and it has to do with relationships and money coming in from outside resources, or even like psychological trauma. The 8th house can also reveal secrets. So there could be a lot of secrets revealed that are associated with your partnerships. There could be a lot of psychological healing that you're having to navigate when it has to do with relationships. This is a time where I would do a lot of self-reflection, a lot of going within. There's a lot showing up for you, Virgo, when it has to do with healing deep inner trauma that you've possibly been holding on to for quite a while. That could maybe be affecting your relationship. So there could be a lot showing up that you're having to reflect on with this Mercury retrograde, and also the eclipses and the eclipse in the 8th. Like there's a lot showing up here where you're really having to sit with energies and figure out, what are your next steps? I would do a lot of journaling. I would stay grounded at this time. I would try to let go of certain things that you cannot control, and just have that self-awareness to be able to, when thoughts are coming in or emotions are coming up, especially with relationships, because this can be a very difficult energy with relationships here, especially with the Mars Saturn conjunction in the 7th house. So you may have to just sit with yourself and go within and figure out, what are your needs, wants, and desires? Are they being met? And what are those next steps? And I believe there will be some clarity around this once Mercury stations direct. It is more difficult because Mercury is your chart ruler. So you do feel this a lot more, and it can be really heavy psychologically. Libra, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in the 7th house of relationships and one-on-one connections. So there can be a lot of miscommunication within relationships at this time, a lot of misunderstandings. So we do want to keep that in mind when connecting with our relationships, or any people that are close to us, because that's that 7th house, right? All of those close one-on-one connections. But definitely your partner in relationships, we really want to, be speaking clearly, making sure there's no misunderstandings, making sure we're understanding the other person. There can also be a lot of reflecting on, who do you want to be? Who do you want in your life right now? You're going through a lot. Just having that lunar eclipse in the first house, you may be releasing aspects of yourself that you're done with. You may be, getting into a new relationship and really reflecting on, is this what I want? And that's really how this energy is kind of showing up for you. You're going to have that solar eclipse in the seventh house as well, which is really going to highlight something around relationships for you. So there's going to be a lot of reflecting and reevaluating your relationships during this time period, during the whole month of April. And once we get into May, there'll be more clarity around that. Scorpio, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in your sixth house of work, health, and daily routine. So you can be rethinking your nutrition habits. There may be something showing up health wise that you're having to address, or maybe rethinking, certain aspects of your health that you're wanting to change, or your body. There might be something you're having to address at work with this Mercury retrograde in the sixth house. Career is in the 10th, but the labor and the work that you put into your job is in the sixth. So you may be having to go back and redo some things during this period of time. So just be cautious of that. But again, there's so much energy here that you could just really be focused on your health, your nutrition, maybe getting in shape, maybe, getting back to changing your daily routine in some way that is, and that Mercury retrograde is going to initiate that kind of reevaluation of your daily routine and your health choices and nutrition. Sagittarius, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in your fifth house of children, creativity, passion, romance, pleasure. Everything you enjoy is in that fifth house. And so during this Mercury retrograde, you could be reevaluating those themes and topics, maybe going back and redoing some creative projects. There might be something showing up with children that you're having to address with that Mercury retrograde in the fifth. This can also be maybe you're meeting like a romantic connection, but you're not sure if they're aligned with you. So you're kind of reflecting and reevaluating that. Capricorn, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in the fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate. So there can be a lot showing up within your home and family that you're having to address. There can be a lot of reevaluating your home, maybe wanting to make changes within the home. A lot of times when Venus is transiting the fourth house, we redecorate the home or, do something aesthetic, change the aesthetics to the home in some way. Also, you're having that solar eclipse in the fourth house. So, there's a lot of wanting to change the home or make changes to the family dynamic with this energy. And so during the Mercury retrograde is when you can be kind of thinking about that, rethinking some things, reevaluating what you want to change and the direction that you want to move in when it has to do with home and family, property, and real estate. Aquarius, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in the third house of community, neighbors, neighborhood, your mindset, communication, siblings, cousins, vehicles. So during this Mercury retrograde, you do really want to be careful of your vehicle because Mercury already rules vehicles. And then having the Mercury retrograde in the third house, you could be having issues with your vehicle. It's definitely a thing. There can also be some shift in mindset, especially for you because it is in that third house. There can be a lot of self-reflection and figuring out how much you've changed and kind of shifting your mindset in some way to put you on a new path, a new direction that is now in alignment with you. There can also be some misunderstandings or miscommunication with siblings or cousins or a neighbor that you want to be, a little cautious of. Pisces, you have this Mercury retrograde happening in the second house of money, finances, material possessions, also your values. And so there might be some stuff showing up around money that you're having to address. There could be some misunderstandings with money, or something going on with material possessions that you're having to address or rethink in some way. You might really be focused on your finances and kind of setting up some type of financial plan. What is the word I'm thinking of? A budget, really thinking about a budget, and because you do have the eclipses happening in this area of life. So the solar eclipse may have really activated something for you around money and finances and material possessions. And then this Mercury retrograde period is when you're kind of reevaluating all of that around your money and finances and wanting to put something in place. If you are dealing with something around money and finances, just know that once we get to the end of April and May, there will be clarity around this. You will gain clarity and a better understanding of what to do about your finances and the direction to move in.